middle of the summertime. It's a prayer for our veterans. Oh God, our Heavenly Father, you have blessed us with brave men and women who are willing to defend our freedom. May your protection and grace surround them each day. Let your healing hand be upon those who suffer wounds and injuries. May those who have made the ultimate sacrifice rest forever in your loving presence, your holy presence. Comfort the families who mourn and are left to remember the precious lives of their loved ones. Help us to honor and support them. Let us ever be mindful of each sacrifice made on our behalf of the American people by our sons, daughters, husbands, wives, mothers, fathers, and friends. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner Gross. That was very well done, very appropriate. Next on the agenda is a Marine veteran, Jason Wolford, who will come forward here and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is roll call. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Commissioner Helserman,
Here.
Commissioner Domas.
Yes.
Commissioner Sample,
Here.
Commissioner Nakagiri,
Here.
Commissioner Drick,
Here.
Commissioner Deaton,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Fiani,
Here.
and Commissioner Gross.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve this evening's agenda.
Moved by Commissioner
Support Deaton.
and supported by Commissioner. All right. Are there any comments or questions or additions or deletions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And we'll move on to the correspondence. There are a number of pieces of correspondence here today, and I might mention to you that a number of these correspondence that came to our office were in support of the resolution to support the Second Amendment. And I wouldn't say that we started it, but we're proud to be a part of that. And there are many of our fellow commissioners throughout the state that are voicing their support for Second Amendment as well. So the chair will will receive a motion to accept and place on file these resolutions, these correspondence rather.
So move. Gross.
Support Deaton.
Moved and supported. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Next item on the agenda is the call to the public. Madam Clerk, do we have any?
We do. I have
Cards.
2 cards this evening. Colleen Quinn from Genoa Township, followed by Ben Tassich, also from Genoa.
You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Okay, good
Thank you.
evening, everybody. I just had some concerns when I was going through the agenda and some of the backup on resolution 2023-07123. And, about accepting funding for immunizations and some of this contact tracing and so forth. We've been down this road before with the COVID funding, so I just want to make sure we're not revisiting that. Again, with the acceptance of any funds, there's the concerns over what strings are attached. And I noticed there's a whereas that, and it might be boilerplate, but may propose future amendments for the purpose of revising the funding or terms of the agreement. So I think I speak for myself and Tim and others in our different groups that we're still shell shocked with all the COVID stuff, and we just don't want to go down that road again. See if I had anything else. When they say funding for like monkeypox and tuberculosis, again, it's like, oh my God, here we go. And they're looking at partnering with congregate care facilities. All these are just red flags for us. So as a general rule, we would like that you not accept funds because of strings attached. And similar concerns with resolutions ending in 124 and 125. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ben Tassich, Genoa Township, followed by John Conley.
Good evening. My name is Ben Tassich. I'm a 23-year resident of Genoa Township. I'd like to thank Commissioner Roger Deaton for his serving our community so effectively. Thank you for all you do to make Genoa Township one of the premier townships in the state. I'm here on behalf of Livingston County Transportation Coalition. Earlier, I brought in a summit report, transportation summit report, a copy, and I hope each one of you received this copy. And if you would indulge me for the next 2 minutes, let me read from, just give you a quick background on, for some of the newer members on the commission, a background on this transportation summit conference. On January 17, 2017, the Livingston County Transportation Coalition, under the chairmanship of Dr. Leo Hannafin, hosted the first ever Livingston Transportation Summit, an event aimed at education, sharing views, motivation, and action regarding improved transportation options in and around Livingston County. Despite an ice storm, over 110 stakeholders came together at Cleary University to learn, listen, and express their views regarding transportation needs in our county and into and out of our county. This participation in and of itself reflects the depth and breadth of the concerns regarding transportation services or lack thereof. Participants represented a wide array of stakeholder segments, including government of cities and townships, municipal and county planners, business and business organizations, educators, environmentalists, bicyclists, workers, seniors, and seniors with disabilities. I would ask you if each one of you would take some time and take a look at that summary and that report of this very important conference that took place 7 years ago. And as you look at that, reflect on what are we presently doing regarding transportation in our county. A lot has taken place over the 7 years, but we also know a lot more needs to be done. So when the budget comes up and we look at how we allocate monies, it is crucial that transportation that is at the crossroads of everything we do in our community, whether going to work, doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, going to church, whatever the situation might be, many of us need public transportation. We do not have automobiles or insurance. So I encourage you to take a look at that report, that summit conference, take a look at some of the findings from that conference. It was well represented by all the stakeholders that need public transportation in our county. And if I can leave you with one thought, and that is public transportation grows the economy, brings in tax dollars, brings in workers, helps workers get to work and pay taxes and be good citizens of this county. Again, thank you for your time. And when you see me, usually I'm here on behalf of Livingston County Transportation Coalition and as a private citizen of Genoa. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
John Conley, Green Oak Township.
Good evening, Commissioner. You have 3 minutes.
Oh, geez, I have to hurry then. Last meeting, we touched base a little bit on the Pledge of Allegiance in public schools. I brought the revised school code, the Acts 380.1347A and 380.1347. which specifically state that between the two of them, that there has to be a flag in every classroom in every public school in Michigan. And it also discusses that there is a requirement to offer the Pledge of Allegiance every school day that's taught in the classroom. I'd like these to become permanent record for the board, and I'll turn them into the secretary so that you have them for record. And I would encourage you to get to your schools and make sure that the flags are up in every classroom and make sure that these are being offered to our students in Livingston County. And at Brighton, we talked briefly about these posters, and I'll give you all a copy. This poster was used in our school and was spread around pretty thoroughly in the classrooms and posted in the classroom, and it helps the student understand what the Pledge of Allegiance is if they didn't know. And I think it's important, and it talks about, again, the form, and if you're in the military, how to handle the pledge, and if you're a civilian like me, how to handle the pledge, which I think is a formal thing that we should all understand in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conway.
My pleasure.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, John.
Could you again give us those, Mr. Chair, could he give us the resolution numbers or the MCL numbers?
Be glad to.
Okay.
The first one is 380.1347.
1347.
Yes, sir. Next one is 380.1347.
0.1347. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have no further cards, but I do believe that there are people online.
The first person that we have up is Lori Cowan.
Yes, thank you. I'm Lori Cowan from Unadilla Township, and I wanted to comment on a running theme of objection from board members supporting organizations that may include DEI and protections for the LGBTQ community in their plans. If indeed this world treated everyone equally, that prejudice and racial injustice did not exist, DEI would not be needed. But it has, and it does. I would think as commissioners looking out for the health and welfare of Livingston, that you would support DEI to help promote a community that promotes equality for all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next up, we have Lisa R.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lisa Rose Marnovich from Livingston County. And I would like to make a comment on a couple of things. I'm really happy to see that there's been some correspondence from other counties regarding Second Amendment, our protection of it. I'd really love to see a resolution that supports our First Amendment with some of the insanely unconstitutional First Amendment bill that just was passed. And then secondly, I would like to address the resolution 2023-07-123. I am shell shocked to see this, especially with the strings attached for contact tracing on surveillance. And, you know, during the whole quote unquote pandemic, our rights were thrown out the window. HIPAA was no longer a concern, which it should be for our health privacy, and our Fourth Amendment for our personal privacy. So I would really like for you to not accept those monies, especially with the designation for what it is outlined for. And I appreciate you guys and hope you have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next, we have Janine Iyer.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your service to our community, and thank you to all Livingston County employees who do their jobs with excellence, including members of the Health Department. I want to comment also on Resolution 2023-07-123, to apply for Michigan Department of Health and Human Services funding. I just want to echo and support what Colleen and Lisa just said concerning this resolution. I have concerns about it. I have concerns about funding coming from the federal government and state to basically, contact trace and investigate and all that. I really don't need anyone to look after me. I'm a big girl. I'm really against this push to be big brother over everybody's health. And so I just would like to see this resolution defeated. So thank you for your time and have a good evening.
Thank you, ma'am.
That's it for participants online.
That's it. Okay.
I move to approve the minutes dated June 26, 2023.
Second sample. Been moved and supported. Are there any comments, questions, or changes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The next item is tabled items from previous meetings. We have none. Item 10 is next, and it's reports. Do we have any reports from any of our commissioners? Yes, sir. Commissioner Deaton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I could start. A few of the commissioners had the opportunity to go over and visit the road commission. And one of the most important questions I think we get asked regularly is fix my roads. And we are policy and budget people up here, but I think a lot of the misnomer there is where the county gets its funding. And so it was really good to sit down with the director and actually take a tour of the facility and actually learn a little bit more about the funding for roads and look at their project board. And so I just want to say, thank you to that crew. The funding comes from registrations and it comes from the gas tax. And the gas tax is broken up between the 83 counties and we only get about 39% of it broken out between the 83 counties. So I think it's important for people to understand where we get the money from. So wanted to put that out there, Mr. Chair. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Deaton. Are there any other reports? Okay, it's going to be a quick evening, I can tell you. It looks that way. Next, I'll turn the meeting over to Commissioner Drick, who will introduce the resolutions for consideration. Commissioner Drick.
Thank you. Item number 11A. It's resolution number 2023-07-116. It's brought to us by the Board of Commissioners. It's a resolution approving the fiscal year 2024 annual implementation plan of the Area Agency on Aging 1B.
Move, Helserman.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Support.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion and or presentation.
Hi, I'm Katie Wendell here from the Area Agency on Aging 1B.
Katie, you have the floor.
Thank you so much for your consideration of our fiscal year 2024 annual implementation plan. Again, since I'm with the microphone now, my name is Katie Wendell. I'm the Director of Planning and Advocacy at the Area Agency on Aging 1B. We're part of a nationwide network of area agencies on aging and one of 16 here in the state of Michigan that are charged with serving older adults, defined by the Older Americans Act as those over the age of 60 and their family caregivers. We also have some programs for individuals with disabilities. We're here to serve the more than 800,000 older adults that call Region 1B, our 6-county slice of Michigan, home. We serve about 30% of the state's older adult population, including over 53,000 older Livingston County residents. Today, we present for your approval our fiscal year 2024 annual implementation plan. This is year 2 of our 3-year multi-year plan, and there are no substantial changes to the service mix that we're offering in the community in this plan. So I wanted to highlight that for you. We continue to do the same programs and services as we described last year in our multi-year plan. This plan was approved by our board of directors, and we gathered community input through a public hearing in May. The plan outlines how we'll distribute federal and state funds, which are largely spent in 2 ways. The first of which is distributing it through a competitive RFP process to local organizations like Livingston Catholic Charities, for example, to provide programs and services in the community, like home delivered meals. We also have some programs and services that we provide as the agency. So our information assistance call center, older adults and family caregivers can call to get information and referral to other programs and services. We also have an in-home service program at our agency. Some highlights from the plan: we continue to describe our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Really, we're able to have some flexibility afforded to us by the state during the emergency status. And we've learned a lot from some of that. So we're seeing both the federal and state government look at revising some of the service standards over our programs and services. So we hope to see some modernization of programs in the coming year. One thing that we're advocating for is to enable our advisory council of older adults from all 6 counties to continue to meet virtually. There was a state requirement that they had to follow all Open Meetings Act guidance, which is hard for older adults coming from all 6 counties to gather in person consistently. We continue to work in a hybrid fashion at our office, and we're working with our providers to distribute some American Rescue Plan funding that was allocated through the Older Americans Act. So that's enabling our contracted service providers to purchase equipment and fund other one-time expenses. Moving forward into fiscal year 2024, we're continuing to implement our advocacy strategy to secure increased support for our programs in areas where we see unmet needs. One of those is support for the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. So that's a program that supports individuals in licensed long-term care facilities, making sure resident rights are maintained. That's really underfunded in Michigan when you look at us compared to the rest of the nation. So that's one focus area. We just recently republished our award-winning Connect resource guide, which features county by county resources for the community. And that's available on our website. And also we can ship printed copies direct to individuals or organizations if you're interested. And we continue to complete all required trainings and data collections to make sure our programs and services are inclusive and welcoming to all. So with that brief overview, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions from commissioners?
I have a question.
Proceed.
Briefly, you talked about the Open Meetings Act. And you said you are under the Open Meetings Act, your organization?
Our board of directors is under the Open Meetings Act. There was a state service standard that mandated that our advisory council, which is not a decision-making body, adhere to the provisions of the Open Meetings Act. Other than that standard, they would not have been held to that. So our board of directors is and will continue to be that advisory board, is where that was a state decision to apply that standard.
Okay. Even though you are a private organization? You're a nonprofit private organization, is that not so?
Yes, there was, I'll have to get the exact citation for you. There was a legal decision that area agencies on aging are held to the Open Meetings Act due to the predominant federal and state funding we receive. So that's.
Okay, so that's the reason why you did it. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further questions, comment?
After we get done with the comments, I have an amendment I'd like to make.
Thank you.
So, but whatever other questions.
Questions, comment, insight? Seeing none. Commissioner Helserman. Floor is yours.
As I mentioned in the committee meeting, I was suggesting that we make an amendment to this resolution, talking about our, I don't know, it's the right word to say, our questions about the DEI being taught. Many of us as commissioners have trouble with how DEI has been used and I think misused. You take some very nice words and they're taken too far. Anyways, I think you have this in front of you, but I will read the amendment after the last whereas, add another whereas the Livingston County Board of Commissioners objects to the training program known as DEI and also objects to the funding of that program. That's one. And I think maybe you want to take it all together. Then in the first, therefore be resolved, the Board of Commissioners hereby gives reserved approval. It gives reserved approval to are added words there instead of just approval. And then another therefore is added. Therefore, be it further resolved that the chairman appoint 2 commissioners to draft a letter which gives more details to our objections. That's.
And you've been kind enough to print this and distribute it to all the commissioners, correct?
Yes, I think everybody had it.
Clerk,
I do have a copy as well.
very good. Is there a second?
I would support that. And also, I'd like to make a comment as well. Ma'am, can you obviously know the issue that we're dealing with here. Can you tell us why you have included that whereas in your resolution? Why?
No. Oh, it was my.
Oh, okay.
It was my amendment.
Right.
So she didn't include it. So.
Okay, sorry.
No.
Any other question, comment, insight, analysis? Commissioner Mackey, you have
Yeah,
the
just
floor.
comments on the proposed amendment. I'm in full support. The DEI, any time, effort, funding that goes towards that program is time, effort, and funding that's taken away from the core mission of AAA 1B to provide the services to the seniors and the caregivers. It is my opinion that DEI is a racist program, and it looks at, in my view, my interpretation, if you have lighter skin color, you are automatically evil. And I just don't see that as beneficial to society today. It's a program that divides us as opposed to unites us, and I'm fully in support of Commissioner Helserman's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other discussion? We have a motion and it's been seconded to amend according to the document. All those in favor of the amendment kindly say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment passes 9-0. Now we'll go into the amended resolution. Any discussion, any further analysis or comment by any commissioner? Seeing none, I will close that and we'll go to voice vote again. All those in favor kindly say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 9-0 is the count and both pass. We're on to
Thank you.
11B. which is 2023-07-117. It's a resolution authorizing the board chair to sign a letter of agreement regarding retirement benefits for re-employed retirees brought to us by the Sheriff Department. Can I get a motion?
So move, Helserman. Support Deaton.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Hauserman, supported by Commissioner Deaton.
Happy to be
Sheriff
here tonight,
Murphy.
and I'm glad to see that Mr. McNulty's got some adult supervision back there. Nicely done. On a serious note, so we just settled a contract with the deputies at the beginning or at the beginning of this year. And at that time, there was not even a thought or a way to hire back retired deputies because they could not be MERS eligible, draw another retirement, et cetera, et cetera. So MERS ended up changing their rules to till the end of 2027 that allows municipalities to hire back retirees. However, they cannot re-enter their existing pension system. But what it does allow them to do is it allows them to draw their pension and still draw a paycheck from the municipality that they're retired from. So it's no secret that the public safety profession is struggling right now with the ability to hire people. So we looked at that option pretty hard, and we ended up hiring a couple, 3 people back. And the conversations with them hiring back was, hey, listen, you won't be in the existing pension system. There's nothing going to be done, blah, blah, blah. However, what happened was when we hired them as a part of their onboarding process, HR said, well, we really can't do that because we would be in violation of the contract because the contract says that we will provide a pension for them. So that's what brought this whole thing to light. So to make a real long story short, we met with the union and we agreed to put 5% of their base pay, no overtime included, into their 457, which is what the county belongs to through Nationwide, a flat fee, 5%. So at the end of the day, we get retirees back that are familiar with the sheriff's office. They know their job. We'll put them in positions that need to be filled anyways. And the advantage to them is they get a little kicker into their 457. Also, the advantage to the county is that's about a $15,000 per deputy savings. The difference between a new hire. So if we hired somebody off the street, it would cost about 15 grand more because they would be in the current MERS hybrid system, which we still have. Be happy to answer any questions.
Question, comment?
More of a comment. So about a month ago, I think Commissioner Gross and I had the opportunity to go over and sit with Under Sheriff Plus and Sheriff Murphy and discuss some other topics. And this one came up, and it's a pretty great idea. Bringing back trained officers already, and it'll maybe save a little bit on the hiring costs. And then my question would be, would these folks be more advantageous to go towards the schools? Because I know we're increasing our presence there as well.
Yeah, so the 3 that we hired back, the 3 that we've hired back so far have been for transports because the correction side of the house was hurting so bad. And that allowed the deputies, the existing deputies, to work inside the jail. So that was the thought there. I didn't realize we were going to have as much of a problem as we are staffing the school resource positions. But we've got a pretty young crew for the most part, and none of them want to do it. And the older guys and gals are happy where they're at. So that will be an option. Long story short, we will likely be bringing back 1 more retiree for the SRO, the school resource position. Yep.
Thank you.
Any further comment, question, analysis? Seeing none, I'll close that portion and go into voice vote. All those in favor of 117, kindly say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm hearing 9-0 passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. We're on to 11C, 2023-07-118. It's a resolution authorizing the change in positions for certain Register of Deeds staff brought to us by Register of Deeds. Can I get a motion?
So moved, Sample.
Support Deaton.
Moved by Sample, support by Deaton. Register of Deeds, Denby, you have the floor.
Well, first off, good evening. I do want to start off with a quick apology. We thought we had our PowerPoint out to you gentlemen ahead of tonight, so we don't mean to come in here at the last minute and bamboozle you with a show, but we just got about 5 slides. If you guys would indulge us and let us go through it. There were some questions at the previous committee hearing in regards to the finances of the Register of Deeds office. And I think this could kind of help clarify some of those questions.
Thank you. Proceed.
Okay, go ahead. Next slide, please. And this is just kind of defines our office. Obviously our purpose is to collect the records and put them on display for public knowledge so that you know what's going on. Without the Register of Deeds office, you can't collateralize your property, get mortgages, that sort of thing. Next slide. I'm going to go ahead and actually skip over this slide because I don't want to get into the weeds too much. I want to get into the finances of it. So one more slide, Dustin. So going in here, this kind of talks about, so at the previous committee meeting, we got into talking about, Commissioner Neckegrade brought some numbers up, and a lot of those were based on, when you look at Munis, it only goes back to 2021. Well, unfortunately for us, that would look like we're on quite a backslide as far as our numbers went, because in 2021 we had hit kind of the peak of the history of real estate, especially here in Livingston County and across Michigan. By looking at the 10-year, it gives you a better idea of what the ebb and flow should look like with our office. What I've asked Brandon to do with our slides today is anything that talks about 2023. I wanted to give you quite possibly the worst possible scenario you could be looking at this year. Go ahead and go to the next slide for me, Dustin. And then when you get into this here, and again, you'll see the numbers are greatly reduced for this year, because that's based on purely a doubling of the current numbers, which isn't a true reflection of what the real estate market does throughout the year. We're in the middle of the hot point of the market. So obviously the bigger numbers come in towards the end of the year. But again, what this does, giving a 10-year, it shows you the revenue and the excess that has been given back to the general fund over the years. And what that ends up working out to is in the mid-70s on average is what you're seeing out of our revenue every year. So you've seen gains as much as close to, well, when you get to 2021, 2020, and some of the numbers we were talking about the other night, you're looking at, $2+ million in excess funds that were brought into the general fund through the Register of Deeds revenue. Those are substantial amounts to expect out of any office. And it's important for me to note at this point that our office, it's not the intent of the Register of Deeds office by its nature to bring in additional revenue. It's our job to figure out what the costs are, and then obviously we charge based on what the cost is to do those types of work. Through the state statute sets those parameters of work we should do. But what we also have the ability to do is to go above and beyond better customer service and different types of searching of our records that can bring in additional revenue. And that's what you're seeing here. So when you see those excess, the 1.3, the $2 million and different numbers that you're seeing up there, all of that is not something that you're guaranteed to get in every county. That's something that's specific to Livingston County. There's other counties that bring in additional revenue, but it's not something that we have to give to the county. It's not something we don't have to give that level of service. That's the service that we're giving because that's what we expect of ourselves. So it's not intended. So just to reiterate, it's not intended to be a revenue generating office. So this is just purely icing on the cake, so to speak. And so in getting into this, and this is part of why we brought this here, is because I really wanted to show you kind of like what that 10-year outlook was like. When you go back and look, one of the concerns was that we had a backslide from 2020 and 2021, but obviously those are the peak. When you go further back, you're going to see obviously we get a lot closer to similar numbers again. There's also, with the worst possible scenario here, we're still looking at bringing in $1 million in excess with the worst possible scenario going on this year. But we would expect like I said, in the heat of everything going on right now, I still expect that to be a very low number or a very conservative number. My estimate would be higher than that when talking with, say, our administration to go over our numbers. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Dustin. And we talked about one of the other things that was brought up at the previous meeting was talking about attrition and whether or not we should be looking at the type of staffing we have right now. Should we be trying to lower our number of staff? But again, there's some things that go on in our office that maybe aren't quite understood. So when you look at the numbers over the years, and we had mentioned it before, there's a certain amount of work that always goes to our office. I believe Commissioner Smith had actually brought that up. Even on a bad year, there's going to be a certain level of work that just has to happen because you're always going to have people that are purchasing or selling houses, refinancing, getting a home equity loan. Even in a bad market or with bad rates, you're going to still have work. There's still things that will move. So there's going to be you're only going to dip so far. But in our case, what we've done here is you'll see where the back indexing and the redacted numbers are so high in 2022. So we challenge our employees to make sure that even though we're not necessarily as busy recording new documents, we're still in the process of back indexing our old documents, which again bring additional revenue to the county. So although you don't see it in the direct proceeds at the moment, over time, we sell those records and there's ability to make more revenue for the county. But without doing that back indexing, you can't make that additional revenue. So during those, as we say, the ebb and flow, when you go into the ebb of it, that's where we start picking up on those numbers. And that's why this piece of the report is so important. The redacted amounts are items like taking social security numbers off, death certificates, farmland agreements that have been recorded in our office. When those items go through, social security numbers for generations, we had just slapped those right on there and they were out there for the public to see. Well, we figured out over time that wasn't probably the best plan for that. They figured that out. Ingham County was the first county to go online. And next thing you know, everybody in the entire world could go on and find it was Diane Byram's social security numbers. She was a former state representative. And so people could see her numbers on their farmland agreements. So they made a state law to have us redact all those. So anything that we need to put online, we need to go through and get all that off from there. So that's work that has to be done by statute again, and it's not something we get paid additional funds for. So this is an opportunity for us during the low times to go through, and you can see those numbers are substantial compared to the previous years. And so again, we need to have people that have a certain level of qualification to know what they're looking for to get through and get these things done. Next slide. So this one here, and again, the FTEs come into question here. And the reason that is because we went with moving Ms. Hoffman to a part-time position. She was looking at going towards retirement. And we were hoping to keep and retain some of that knowledge and her customer service specialty, which is proven with the award she's won right here at this county. Many of you, I'm sure, have worked with Mary Hoffman and are very familiar with how good of a person she is just in general. Her level of customer service, her kindness. Mary's the kind of person that goes out of her way to make sure that if somebody looks like they're questionable footing, will literally walk somebody all the way back out to their car to make sure they make it out there. So she actually was I believe third quarter of last year, she was your recipient or one of your recipients for the Employee Recognition Award here in the Commissioners. And then Emily, she had left us at one point and had asked for an opportunity to come back. She had some family stuff. They were moving to a different area. She actually moved up to Saginaw area. She was able to come back to us and had asked if there would be an opportunity. I was able to bring her back as a part-time employee. Again, just an absolute ton of knowledge, but back indexing, some of the things that she has knowledge in, are very important right now for us. And so I was excited to be able to get her back when Mary said she was looking at going part-time. We'd like to elevate Emily up. Mary had requested that if we were going to keep her on, that we try and get her this higher FTE to get the benefits along with it. And so by all means, I said I would come and ask for that. I think it's a fair ask based on what our office brings to the county. The ask is essentially a $4,000 one at this time. I don't think that This isn't something where I would suggest this if it was a new employee coming in off the streets again, similar to the sheriff's request. It's one of those where you have an opportunity to retain somebody who has a great amount of knowledge and is bringing revenue to the county as it is. I'd take any questions at this time if you guys had any.
Questions, comments, observations?
Commissioner Smith.
Commissioner Smith.
Can you go back 2 slides to the income and expenses, please? So in 19 and through 21, your expenses went over 600,000. What would be the variable component of that? That because you have obviously a fixed component.
So 2019, 100,000 of that is actually, it's slightly over 100,000 of that is the remodeling of the 3rd floor of the courthouse, 3rd and 4th floor of the courthouse. So that's why you have such a substantial jump there. We did have a couple of employees have retired in those years as well. So you do see, somewhere in there, you start to see a little bit of a reduction, then it kind of comes back again. So you do get a little bit as the employees come and go. There is a reduction when you start to see also the general revenue as it just comes down. We have items that are use cost. So obviously those would come down again. So Fiddler software and like that, it's based on the use of it. So.
Commissioner Nakagiri.
Yeah, regarding the 2023 estimate of revenue and expenses, is that for the year end 2023?
So that, again, that was, I'd asked Brandon to make it the scariest possible number he could come up with, which is essentially just taking what we had in at the end of June and giving you, and just doubling that number, which is a very elementary way of giving you a 12-month look, because the real estate market doesn't move until June. So you don't really see the big numbers. And I think Commissioner Smith could back me up on that. You'd get into your bigger numbers are going to come in like in August and a little bit beyond that even. So.
No, I appreciate the discussion. Within Munis, the budgeted revenue, what we were expecting to achieve was $2.573 million. So yes, that estimate is likely on the, skewed to the low side. But I'm anticipating, even if we jack that number up to $2 million, we're still going to be $500,000 short of what we had budgeted in terms of revenue.
I think too, you might be looking at a total revenue, which would include my entire, that would include everything from like automation as well as, maybe our other special revenue funds. I'm speaking specifically on just the general fund itself.
No, this was on general fund.
That was just general fund? Okay,
Yes.
just want to make sure.
Yeah. Will you provide a copy of your presentation to the clerk so we can?
So 100%, we actually, like I said, we sent this out. I thought we had it out in time, and I'm, a little embarrassed that you guys didn't have it prior to the meeting. So I also, just for, I'll call it the fun fact sheet for our office, I dropped that off to your guys' stations prior to the meeting as well. That was something that just, we threw together today as part of our talking points, but I wanted you guys to have those as well. So, but yes, I would be more than happy to get you all that. And like I said, we are in the middle of the budget process as well. And that isn't actually the number that I plan to put forward, but that's the number I wanted to give you guys to show you that even in the worst possible scenario, you're getting an additional $1 million in revenue that you wouldn't necessarily receive if you were, in another county, let's say, where they didn't have tracked index and some of these other options for revenue.
A question actually, this is really a discussion amongst everybody here at the dais and yourself. The 0.525 FTE, it was pointed out in a discussion I had with another commissioner, that 0.5 FTE is 20 hours, 0.525 is 21 hours. So when we go up by 1 hour, we are I'm going to call it gaming the system, because historically our policy has been that, at a threshold of 0.5 or higher, that certain benefits kick in. MERS pension benefits, service credit kicks in, holiday pay kicks in, sick time pay kicks in, vacation pay kicks in. And so that caused me to ask questions, of HR, specifically around, well, who else do we do this for? Is there other county employees, or is this a special situation? So I got information from our director of HR. There are 130 associates that have 0.50 FTEs or lower. Of those 130 persons, 62 of them have an FTE of 0.50 to 0.475. So in all cases, these persons wouldn't qualify for the benefits, the 4 benefits that I just mentioned. There are 36 associates that have FTEs of 0.60 to 0.75. And that's, so in total, there's 166 persons that are part-time. The persons that get those 4 benefits, all of them are at 0.6 FTE and higher. That's 3 out of 5 days. So they're working 3 out of 5 days. And I personally am not, don't have any issue with paying those benefits for people that work more than half time. I think if we set a precedent by doing 0.525 for one person, how is that fair to the almost 60 some odd people at 0.50 that don't get the benefits? We're going to make this, I'm going to say exception. This will be the only person that falls into this category. I don't see that as good policy. I don't see it as fair. I don't see it as fair to the taxpayers. I appreciate your point of view on that.
So I guess I would start by saying I can respect your opinion on that, because you're looking at it purely from a number standpoint, and also I understand the policy side of it as well. When we began this, I'll call it a journey, or we spoke with HR. We've been through multiple meetings with HR going over this. It was something that we'd asked a lot of these questions about, and we came to the idea that this was a prudent way to handle this. So there was never a time with HR where they said, hey, I just don't think this would go through, or I just think this is so obscure or so different. As a matter of fact, it was quite the contrary. It was suggested to me that this was a good way to handle this. So if it's your suggestion that we only allow it if we were to bump Mary to a 3-day and see if she's willing to accept that, then maybe that's the route we go. I guess for me, on the budgeting side of things, I don't see that it would be necessary to add in more cost just to make a point. And so in this case, I was trying to make do with less hours, I guess. I was looking at it from the full budget standpoint. And on my side, I thought, well, we can do this. And again, I think she's a special scenario where she brings something to the table that I'm not going to get out of a regular part-timer. So if it doesn't work out and we don't go that route, and she says, well, I don't want to, I'm just going to, take my game and go home because I, didn't get what I asked for, and that's a possibility, then I'm going out looking for a new part-timer that does not have any experience at all. And that of course changes things in my office and what we gain from that. So I guess that's where I'm at. We've got to come to a conclusion one way or another. Something has to happen because we're already working, we've essentially started to adjust them to their different timing. Mary's going to make a move regardless, and I need to make the move for Emily regardless. Emily's essentially working like a full-time schedule without getting the benefits of working the full-time schedule right now.
Let me, if I may. I am not in no way advocating bumping Mary up to 0.6. I'm saying to bumper down to 0.5. That in fact, once we get to through our discussion, I'm going to make an amendment and propose an amendment that we go to 0.5 from the 0.525. But I'm not saying bumper up, that isn't, if we bumped her up to 0.6 and incorporated the other change, taking the other person, I think you said her name was Emily, from 0.5 to 1.0, we actually add staff to your office when the projections for 2024 are the revenue is going to decline. I had provided a graph, an analysis saying it was going to decline by 25%. In fact, I was mistaken. It's going to decline by 26%. I'd say not a material difference, but I just I'm opposed to the changes, in the write-up that was presented, this 2-page write-up, it caught my attention on page 2. It says, we have a responsibility to our employees to act upon their request and to act in the best interest of the employee and the department. What that leaves out for me as a key is that I also have a responsibility to act on behalf of the taxpayer. And in fact, and I've said this before, yes, we are more or less a board of directors, if you will, for an enterprise called Livingston County. But we also represent the individual citizens. And when I have to choose, when I'm asked to choose between the interests of the county or the interests of the citizen, I am going to side with the citizen every time. And in this case, it is not fiscally prudent. And I am not going to ask my constituents to pay more than they have to when we're in these inflationary times where everybody's pocketbooks are being pinched. I am not going to be part of adding to their expenses. Thank you.
Could I speak to that for just one moment?
Pardon me?
Could I
Yes.
respond to that?
Go ahead.
Okay, so my response to that is that you and I actually both have the exact same responsibility in regards to the constituents and the employees. I believe that your role in the county is different than mine, but I do believe that you guys as a board owe something to the employees of the entire county. But I also believe that you're being suggestive that maybe I wasn't fiscally conservative enough for the people. And I believe that the people have elected me as a fiscal conservative to do exactly that. So I take a little offense to the commentary there because I believe it's suggestive that I'm not doing the same thing as you. And quite the contrary, as the Register of Deeds, I protect we the people's most important asset, which is their home. You protect the budget of the county.
Commissioner Smith, go ahead.
I'm sorry, are you done?
No, I'm all set. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I just wanted to point out to my peers that, in fact, last week I shared a lot of the same concerns Commissioner Nakagiri just outlined it. The dollar amounts, the variation on the dollar amounts, what, $4,300. It's not a dollar amount that's going to move our needle one way or the other. But I was looking at more of the precedent setting concern you outlined, and I had a chance after last week's meeting to speak with the head of our HR department about that. And she felt very confident that while it's slightly unusual, that it was not something that was going to be precedent setting, that it was not, it was very clear in our human resources manual what the definitions are, and she was very comfortable moving forward under this scenario. I tend to rely on our department heads, division heads to make sure that we're right sized, and I rely on our personnel department to make sure that they're doing their job, and checking and balancing that as well. So, I'll end my comment with the same thing I asked last week, and that is for for all division heads to, as we go through these changing economic times, especially, I think next year might be kind of interesting. Keep an eye on your employee counts, because there may need to be some adjustments in the next year or two. So I would just ask all the division heads to keep an eye on that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Further comment? Commissioner Sam.
I suppose we wouldn't probably be able to get this answer right away from HR, but how many full-time employees have went to part-time employees and been reduced to half-time? Because you're kind of backing her way out, right? So somebody that's been here, that's earned their time, potentially how long do you see her staying on?
So just in general, and based on Commissioner Smith's comments as well, and his previous comments of attrition at the previous meeting, I believe that my staff in general, I think over the next few years, I would expect that there will be some retirement. And that's one of my concerns as we move forward, to be able to make these types of adjustments, because I do plan to utilize the attrition as it comes available and as it makes sense for the office. But at this moment, the amount of work that we're doing hasn't gone down. So to answer your question, I do believe that this is part of a, so to speak, retirement process in Ms. Helpman's regard.
Yeah, I guess on this part is setting a precedence of gaining the system at a 0.525 or whatever it is I would say on a new hire, that might be my outlook on something on that. But as somebody that's reaching the end of their services at the county and they're making their way to retirement, I see it a little differently. Thank you.
Any further comment, question, or analysis? Commissioner McAgeary.
Just in my information gathering from HR, Mary has 6 years with the county. So I am going to propose to amend the resolution to change from 0.525 to 0.50.
There's been a motion to amend. Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second? For lack of a second, the motion will not proceed.
Mr. Chair, I move the question.
This is a voice, no, this is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Deaton,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Fiani,
Yes.
Commissioner Gross,
Yes.
Commissioner Helserman,
Yes.
Commissioner Domas,
Yes.
Commissioner Sample,
Yes.
Commissioner Nakagiri.
No.
And Commissioner Drick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
We're on to 11 sub D. It's number 2023-07-119.
Resolution.
Well, actually, we would need a second for the move to the question, so. So Commissioner,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Commissioner Nakagiri said that we had to vote, he thought we were voting on the move the question. See, Commissioner Domas made a motion to move the question, but that would require a second anyways.
Well, so let's just rehearse it again. That was a rehearsal. So let's go for the real.
We could say the motion to move the question did not receive a second and therefore was not acted upon. And then we immediately went to a vote on the motion that was on the table, which was pertaining to Resolution 2023-07-118.
In reality, there was no second to the motion to move the question.
Correct. There was not a second to that. You just requested a roll call, so
went to roll
I
call vote on the
did a
entire
roll
matter.
call.
Correct. I
So
think that's how the minutes should reflect.
Mr. Chair, would it be if it's Commissioner Gary's misunderstood it, I would think he has the right to ask that it be revoted?
Yeah,
with-
no,
With the right.
You say move the question. I guess that is, I don't know what that means. I interpret it as a motion to call the question, which there wasn't a second actually that Commissioner Fiani is correct. So to do it properly, and we are legislators, we are lawmakers, if you will, I strongly advocate that we do things the correct way. And so in my view, it would be appropriate to have a motion to call the question and then a second and then a vote on whether, because calling the question is we're saying we want to cut off debate. So, which is different than saying we want to support this resolution.
So does that sound like we are going to treat that as a rehearsal and I will call the question for the second time?
Support Smith.
And I'll ask for a support.
Support by Commissioner Smith.
Support.
Thank you.
Roll call vote.
can I ask legal counsel?
Are you making a motion to call the question or are you just saying, are we voting on the main resolution?
We want to call, I wanted to stop debate.
Then you would take a motion to call, a motion to call the question a second, then you would do a voice vote for that. And then you would move to, if that passed, you would move to that resolution. If you're calling the question to cut off debate.
Correct. So
Is there a second for the motion to call the question?
I have Commissioner Smith as the second to that motion.
Then there would be a voice vote for that motion. That's procedural.
So will I just disregard the previous roll call? Thank you.
I would ask for a roll call vote on calling the question.
We would need 2/3 majority for the call the question.
that correct, Counselor? You gonna look it up?
I can confirm that it requires 2/3 to call the question. It's going to get the 2/3.
Yeah, we're motioning.
So it's,
Let's do the roll call on the call the question.
I will take the roll call to whatever Mr. Chair prefers. If you would like a roll call on the,
Let's call the roll.
okay, so I'm going to, this is a roll call on the motion to call the question. Commissioner Domas,
Yes.
Commissioner Sample,
Yes.
Commissioner Nakagiri,
no.
Commissioner Dreck,
Yes.
Commissioner Deaton,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Fiani,
Yes.
Commissioner Gross,
Yes.
and Commissioner Helserman.
Yes.
Motion to call the question passes.
Now please have a roll call vote on the.
On resolution, okay. Commissioner Sample,
Yes.
Commissioner Nakagiri,
No.
Commissioner Dreck,
Yes.
Commissioner Deaton,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Fiani,
Yes.
Commissioner Gross,
Yes.
Commissioner Helserman,
Yes.
and Commissioner Domas.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're on to 11 sub D. It is numbered 2023-07-119. It's a resolution authorizing an agreement with Otis Elevator Company to provide replacement, maintenance, and repair services brought to us by Facility Services. Can I get a motion?
Move Helserman.
Support. Moved by Helserman, support by Deaton. Director Eggleston, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this proposed resolution is to award a 5-year contract with Otis Elevator. It's for maintenance, service, and replacements. So we created an evaluation committee with fiscal services as well as the EMS department they actually have half of the county's elevators in their one building. So we discussed this in committee. Happy to answer any questions or have discussion.
Questions, analysis, comment? Seeing none, I'll close. We'll go to voice vote. All those in favor kindly say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 9-0 passes. Stay there, you're up next. This is 11 sub E. It's number 2023-07-120. It's a resolution authorizing the replacement of the historic courthouse elevator brought to us by Facility Services. Can I get a motion?
So moved, Deaton.
Second sample.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Deaton, seconded by Commissioner Sample. Director Eggleston, you may proceed.
Thank you. Again, we discussed this in committee. I'm going to utilize the contract just recently approved to make this purchase. It is a capital and budgeted project for 2023. So I know a lot of people are anxious to get this moving. I see Joe back there. He loves this elevator. It's his favorite. So we'll make a lot of people, employees, residents happy. And I really, there's some customization to this elevator. So we're going to conform to the historicness of the historic courthouse.
Thank you. Discussion, question, comment? Analysis? Seeing none, I'll close that portion. It'll go to a roll call vote. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Deaton,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Fiana,
Yes.
Commissioner Gross,
Yes.
Commissioner Helserman,
Yes.
Commissioner Domas,
Yes.
Commissioner Sample,
Yes.
Commissioner Nakagiri,
Yes.
and Commissioner Drick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're on to 11 sub F. It's number 2023-07-121. It's a resolution authorizing the board chair to sign a letter of understanding regarding paramedic licensing. It's brought to us by Emergency Medical Services. May I get a motion?
Move it, please.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Domas, supported by Commissioner Gross. Director Feldposh, are you on Zoom?
Yes, I am. Good evening. This is a project we've been working on for almost a year between us and the union and legal counsel. Finally came to some language that we could all agree on to resolve an issue we had that came up over almost a year ago now on the contract. So we discussed it pretty well at general government. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions, comment, analysis from commissioners? Commissioners.
I only signed this anyhow, so.
Seeing none, I close the discussion part. This will go to voice vote. Kindly say aye if you are voting yes.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, it's a 9-0 unanimous vote. The next item is numbered 11G 2023-07-122. It's a resolution authorizing the addition of 4 FTEs brought to us by Emergency Medical Services. Can I get a motion?
So move, Gross.
Support, Deaton.
Moved by Commissioner Gross, support by Commissioner Deaton. Director Feldposh, you have the floor.
Again, I tried to answer all the questions I thought you would have in the memo. We discussed this at length at general government. If there are specific questions, obviously EMS is just trying to keep pace with the growing need of Livingston County, and these 4 FTEs will help us keep pace with that.
Thank you. Questions, comment, concerns? Commissioner Nakagiri.
Just for clarification, are the FTEs, are these paramedics or EMTs?
Well, we haven't hired them yet, so they're budgeted as paramedics in the process of giving you worst case scenario numbers. I don't know what they'll be until we actually interview and hire them.
So the budget is for the paramedics, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further question, comment, insight, analysis? Seeing none, I will close that portion, and I believe we go to roll call vote.
Commissioner Gross,
Yes.
Commissioner Helserman,
Yes.
Commissioner Domas,
Yes.
Commissioner Sample,
Yes.
Commissioner Nakagiri,
Yes.
Commissioner Dreck,
Yes.
Commissioner Deaton,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Fiani.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're at
Thank
11. You're welcome. We're at 11 sub H. It's number 2023-07-123. It's a resolution to apply for Michigan Department of Health and Human Services funding to support Livingston County Health Department's response to emerging threats for the period of October 1, 2023 through September 30, 2024. Can I get a motion?
Move Helserman. Support.
Moved by Commissioner Helserman, supported by Commissioner Domas. Director Bowling, are you on Zoom?
I am. Apologize if my connection's a little jumpy. I'm camping in northern Michigan right now, but joining you folks. So this is a resolution to apply for funding. This is reoccurring funding we've received from the Board of Commissioners from the last few years. Although this funding was born out of COVID in 2020, the funding now helps support our immunization program for all immunizations in the health department and the contact tracing that we do for all communicable diseases within the department. So I would encourage you to support application for this funding this year. As a reminder in the resolution, I make reference to resolution 2021-09-156, which set restrictions on the use of these funds under that resolution. So I'm happy to entertain any questions you guys may have.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comment, analysis? Commissioner Nakagiri.
Yes, Director Bowling, I was wanted to know if you would share your perspectives on, this is doing, I'll say vaccines for an array of different communicable diseases, but if the board were to share with me your thoughts if the board were to pass restraint on that, saying that we as a county health department are not going to use any of our resources to administer the COVID shots. That anyway, your thoughts on that?
I would be opposed to that. COVID is a communicable disease, just like influenza. Treating it differently makes no sense in my mind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further question, comment? Helserman, proceed.
Yeah, this is kind of a broad funding. I think that COVID, I think we learned a lot of lessons. Hopefully, the health department learned a lot of lessons also, and Matt referenced a previous resolution that we put restrictions on some of this funding, and those are still in place. In contact tracing, I think as done with COVID was, I think it proved to be ineffective. But COVID tracing, if you were going to get into scarlet fever or diphtheria or smallpox or whatever, there are certain times and places where contact tracing investigation is very useful. And so though we had, as a county, some I don't know if misuse is the right word. And a lot of it was misunderstanding of and the misunderstanding went way too far, put it that way. Anyways, I favor this. And I hope that the restrictions that we have placed on it will forestall a repeat of 2020. Thank you.
Further comment, question? Commissioner Fiani.
Commissioner Deaton, can take it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Director Bowling, I had the pleasure to meet with you and your staff a little bit last week, and we discussed like contact tracing and investigation a little bit. And that's what's in this resolution. Could you expand on it a little bit? Just because we have, a lot of citizens have been concerned about it here in the dais and via email.
Yeah, sure. It's just a general term for things public health has done, for generations. It's if we get communicable disease transmitting in the community, we don't want that to spread to the extent that people are getting sick and we have people dying and going to the hospital. So, we like to know who those people have been in contact with, and to the extent that we can reduce that spread. Again, it's voluntary. Folks may or may not talk to us if we ask the question. But our goal is to stop the spread of disease, to stop disease from happening before it happens, or as it's happening, reduce the extent of it. So that's all contact tracing investigation does. Commissioner Helserman was correct. I don't know that things are handled as well as they could have been during the pandemic. That wasn't on our department. Some things at the state probably didn't work as smoothly as we had hoped. So I hope that answers it. It's just, just a broad concept on how we can reduce the spread of disease.
Thank you. Is that satisfactory? Thanks. Okay. Now Commissioner Fiani.
This question is actually for Commissioner Helserman, and I apologize for placing you on the spot. I was not familiar with those guardrails that you were referencing.
Matt Bowling referenced a resolution.
Yes, please proceed.
So I pulled it up. I know you probably think I'm tweeting, but I'm actually usually doing work on this thing. So I pulled up the resolution because I thought that might be a question. I know that quite a few of you weren't on the board back in 2021, but this grant in 21 was rejected by the board initially. And at the time, it was a decision made to use ARPA funds to do what this funding would have done, because we were in the middle of a COVID response at that time. And so the resolution that was ultimately adopted put quite a few guardrails on the use of funding for COVID response. And so some of the wording might sound a little dated, because keep in mind this came from 21, but this is still in effect. It said that no funds may be used to vaccinate persons 0 to 18 years of age without the express written consent of their parent or guardian and the presence of their parent. Also, no funds will be used to institute a countywide vaccine mandate, which we didn't pursue, institute a countywide mask mandate, which we didn't pursue, implement policies which are more restrictive than state policies with respect to discriminating between vaccinated and unvaccinated persons. At the time, you may remember, there was some different treatment, whether someone was vaccinated or not, and this said that we would not be treating people differently, more aggressively than what state policy at the time was. And then the last was related to school quarantines. None of the funds could be used to implement policies which are more restrictive than state policies, which cause healthy students to be excluded from school and extracurricular activities. And so I know some of those things you have to go back a couple of years to remember the context, but the bottom line is we can't use any funding that we receive to vaccinate children without parental consent. We can't use it to institute a mask mandate. We can't use it to institute a vaccine mandate. And those things still exist. And so the reason why Director Bowling put that in was to let you know that any funding we receive for emerging threats, which now COVID's not the focal point anymore, these policies still exist and can't be used. The resolution also stated that COVID vaccines would only occur in our East Complex, that we're not going to travel around and vaccinate people around the county, which we haven't done. And so there were several different provisions, but I can provide this resolution to all the commissioners after the meeting. But those rules still exist, and those have not been changed since the time this was passed in 2021. Thanks.
Thank you. I thank you for using that, Commissioner Helserman, and thank you, Administrator Byrd, for reviewing that with us. I do have actually a concern with that resolution, because it sets the threshold at what the state, I'm in support of it in general. I don't think it goes far enough, actually, because it sets the threshold at what the state mandates. And I think as a county, we should be able to, I'm confident we can govern ourselves without the state having to step in. So initially, I would have relied upon those guardrails actually to help keep the county the position that I think our residents would greatly appreciate, and then support the resolution on the table. But with a threshold being set at the state level, especially with who's governing the state of Michigan at the time, this does actually give me concern. This resolution does give me concern. So is there an immediate timeline for approving this resolution to move forward?
To get the application into the state, my plan was to come to the board to accept the funding in August, and we need to execute contracts in early September. So, could it be delayed? This is your decision as the Board of Commissioners, but this is funding we've been approved in the past. We do operate under those guardrails, and this does support staff currently in our department that are operating in these programs. So.
I'm not making a motion at this time, but I would share with my fellow commissioners that I am not eager to act on this resolution this evening without stronger guardrails in place. And I'm happy to make a motion if there's a consensus among the board that would be the direction to go.
We'll have to withdraw the motion that's currently on the floor. Is that true? Is that how that would work?
I could make a motion to postpone or a motion to table.
Let's try either one of those that you're comfortable with, and then we won't act on this resolution, this motion, and I understand your position. I think we deserve some time on it.
So I move to, well, initially, before I make the motion, is there a timeline? I guess I asked Administrator Byrd, that would be Director Bowling. Is there a timeline? I presume the next board meeting, you would want us to act upon it. That would give everybody sufficient time.
I would like to come to the board and during HHS subcommittee in August, and then full board in August for approval of acceptance of the funding should this pass. So if it could be presented at the next board meeting, if that timeline could be met, that'd be great. Because that way I could meet the deadlines at the state.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's well understood, so perhaps it is. This is a resolution to seek the funding, but the health department has to come back to us to get the funding. So, there is still, even if we move forward with this tonight, there is still time to enact the stronger guardrails before we actually accept the funding. So,
Thank you for sharing. With this new information, I'd be okay with moving forward, and then I think that would give us time to act accordingly.
So there's no motion.
So no motion.
Understood. Any further comment or analysis or question?
It would have to come before the, I just want to confirm, it does have to come before the board to accept the, okay.
Yes. Correct. Just asking.
So go ahead. So we're based on approval, we still have time to act if we.
Correct. With that understanding, there's no motion to amend. Or
I would just say, if there's people that want to look at this further, they should be assigned today, or just assign it to the general government, because general government is the one that, and if you have concerns and you're not on general government, at least during that part of the program, you should be up here giving your input, at least verbally, to that effect.
Commissioner,
proceed.
I'll withdraw my support for that motion, for that resolution. And Commissioner, if you'd like to withdraw making the motion, I think that would put us to neutral ground, would it not?
I'm
doesn't go
comfortable
anywhere.
going forward personally, but, because we have time to act. We have time to see if there
if there are reasonable, if there's more specific language that we need to make the commissioners
So
feel.
you want to put it, you want it to be dealt with at a committee between now
Yeah,
and
that's
then?
what I would say. Let them apply.
But right
for
now, we have a
this.
motion on the floor. We're going to
Yeah,
vote it up or
to
down.
apply, yes, I think they should apply for it. And I'm comfortable with the guidelines as they are, but any policy should be reviewed. That's what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? You know, so every policy should be revisited, so I'm happy to revisit them.
So you want us to vote on this thing right now?
That's, my motion is still.
I still have a motion by Commissioner Helserman. I believe Commissioner Domas withdrew his second.
I'll
Is there
second.
Any other second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We now have a second by Commissioner Smith to Commissioner Helserman's motion on the resolution ending in 1, 2, 3. Any further questions or comment? Commissioner Gross.
So we're ready to vote on this resolution as it stands right now. Is that correct?
Correct. I've heard no amendments. I've heard
Okay.
no tabling. I've heard no other motions.
Thank you.
I would just ask that we get a copy of that other one so that we can, we just heard it. We need to read it again. So that's.
In that case, I'll close the discussion, close the questions, and this is a voice vote on resolution ending 1, 2, 3. All those in favor kindly say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed say nay. 9-0 passes. We're to item number 11, sub I. It's number 2023-07-124. It's a resolution to apply for Michigan Department of Health and Human Resources funding to support Livingston County Health Department's Medical Reserve Corps. It's brought to us by the Health Department. Can I get a motion to just, can I get a motion?
Move Helserman.
Support Gross.
I'm hearing a motion by Commissioner Helserman, a second by Commissioner Gross. Director Bolang, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is new funding that we're looking to apply for to support our Medical Reserve Corps. These are volunteer members of our department. They are not paid. They did support us quite a bit during the pandemic response and continue to support us, doing outreach in the community, first aid trainings, other sorts of emergency preparedness support items. This would give us roughly $100,000 mainly to support existing staff in further efforts to re-engage those volunteers, provide training, provide some strategic planning going forward. So this was presented again at General Government. Happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you. Questions, comments, analysis? Seeing none, I'll close that. We'll vote on 1, 2, 4 by voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it's a 9-0 vote. We are at 11J, 2023-07-125. It's a resolution to authorize application for the delivery of comprehensive health services funding for the period of October 1, 2023 to September 30, 2024. May I have a motion?
So move Gross.
Thank you. And a second, if any?
Support Smith.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Gross, supported by Commissioner Smith. Director Bolang, you're up for a third time.
Great. So this is application of this is our long-standing grant funding we get from the state of Michigan to run our mandated programs in the health department. They're listed in the resolution. We've been receiving this funding as long as I worked for the department, from what I can remember. The amounts have changed over the years, but the main programs have remained pretty consistent. So I could entertain any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Questions? comment, analysis? Commissioner Fiani.
I presume that this would have to come before the board again to accept if approved for the grant.
Yes, all these three resolutions are to be, are consistent with the new grant policy of the county to come before the board for application approval and then to accept the funding at a future meeting, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just one question, clarification. This is basically the center money that you receive. Is this the kind of the core of your operation?
Yeah, it's our largest single grant funding source. I mean, we have a budget of about $6 million. You know, this is 1.65 roughly. So yeah, it's one of our larger funding sources.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions, further comment? Seeing none, I'll close that portion and we'll go into a voice vote. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it's a 9-0 vote.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Director. We're at item 12 on our agenda. It's entitled Accounts Payable Reports. Sub A, claims dated July 17, 2023. Sub B, payables dated June 17 through July 7, 2023. Can I get a motion?
Motion Smith.
Thank you.
Second sample.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Sample. Voice vote. All those in favor kindly say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 9-0, both passes, 12A and B. We're at item number 13. It's the call to the public. This one is a bit shorter. It's only 2 minutes. Same rules apply as other calls to the public.
I do have one card, but prior to that, I would just like to make the public aware and the commissioners that tomorrow we are closing the Vital Records Division of the Clerk's Office at 10:30. For the first time in over 8 years, the State Vitals Registrar Office is providing training. And so we are sending all of our vital record staff to training being put on. So we apologize for the inconvenience to the public, but it is very important to get staff trained. So we will reopen for normal business hours Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. And we do have John Conley from Green Oak Township.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Helserman.
I think the clerk neglected to introduce to the public our new person. If you'd
I
so.
do. I would be happy to. The clerk's office vitals is finally fully staffed right now. We welcomed William or Bill Mitch in the office manager position for vitals, and he's a great addition. He is starting week 3, and welcome, Bill.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Speech. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
And with that, oh,
Commissioner Gross.
As long as we're talking about training,
yes.
have you gotten much more detail or specific information with respect to any training that's going to be required in terms of conduct of elections next year?
Well, next year is going to be a very busy election year. Not only do we conduct 3 statewide minimum elections with the presidential primary, but we are also going to be implementing early voting. That is going to require additional training sessions as we train election inspectors who are going to be working the early voting sites. We should have responses later this month from the city and township clerks with what the intention is, whether to conduct the early voting that's going to be required for their jurisdiction on their own, or we've had some of our jurisdictions reach out to the county and express an interest for the county operating one central early voting site. We have jurisdictions such as Cohocton that don't have full-time clerks. So it'd be very difficult for them to operate the 9 days early voting on their own. Same thing with Unadilla. Same thing, City of Howell is only open 4 days a week now. So as long as the legislature passes and the governor signs legislation that authorizes the county clerk to conduct an early voting site, our intent is to support our voters and our local clerks and offer that at the county level. I can't tell you for certain how many jurisdictions are going to conduct that on their own versus how many the county will handle. But we are looking like we're going to be a hybrid situation. So we will be offering training even for those election inspectors when, you know, let's take a jurisdiction. If they decide to operate it on their own, the county clerk conducts that training. It's beneficial for a lot of different reasons, but it also, one of the most important is the continuity across the county, that all of our election inspectors are trained by ourselves. So we will conduct, the county clerk's office will conduct that initial training, and then our local clerks can conduct supplemental trainings for their election inspectors. But we anticipate training in the ballpark of 1,800 to 2,000 election inspectors for Livingston County next year.
When do you anticipate that might start?
Well, statutorily, it is supposed to take place within a certain time frame before an election. So I anticipate, you know, we're still kind of pending on when that presidential primary is going to be. We think it's going to take place late February, February 27th. At that point in time, we have to have them trained, ready to go before at least 9 days before that election. So we will probably be starting sometime in January, I anticipate, you know, mid-January.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I see no other hands. Please
Um,
proceed.
Just real briefly on this, once we know for sure how many jurisdictions would like the county to conduct the early voting for them, I would like to make a presentation to the Board of Commissioners, not only to educate you on how we think early voting is going to look in Livingston County, but to prepare for the budgets and to start educating the public. So with that, we have John Conley from Green Oak Township.
Evening, Board. I wanted to follow up on the flags in schools, and for the record, and I'd like our clerk to record this in the minutes if possible. A few years back, the Knights of Columbus for Brighton area schools, for Brighton High School specifically, there were over 90 flags missing in the high school. And I actually had them sign an affidavit to that fact and have it notarized because nobody ever believed it. So it's a serious thing that there be 90 flags misplaced. And I'll share with you again, one more case. A customer came in who was a active lieutenant in the Air Force. He showed up in one of our schools and realized there were no flags in his school. So he went to administration in the school at the time. This is about the same time frame, give or take a year or two. And he approached administration and said, there's no flags. And they said, well, that's right. We're not going to have any. Well, he pursued that just a little further, and that principal retired, a new principal started, and he bought the flags himself, this veteran / active duty combat pilot, because he came to Michigan from another state and couldn't believe they were missing. Now, this is firsthand, him to me. That's what happened. So those flags were paid for by a veteran, actually active duty soldier. So it's a serious thing. So I'd like all of you, our board in their school districts, make a phone call. Say, do you have your flags up in your school? Are they in your classrooms? Are you doing the Pledge of Allegiance every day? And I'd also like to share some good news on that front. Commissioner Fiani was our board president, Brighton area schools, and he brought Judge Warren's program into Brighton area schools called Patriot Week. And you'll never believe it, but it only passed by a 4-3 vote. They believed in our school board, the others that opposed this idea, believed that it was too much effort on behalf of our teachers to support Patriot Week as it was brought to our school system. But your Nick Fiani, our Nick Fiani, Livingston County, pushed that through. I obviously supported it 100% when he brought the idea to me as another one on the board with him. And I was proud, you can be proud of him for doing that. And it wasn't easy to get that through. And so we still celebrate that today. Every year we have Patriot Week. I go through the school, the windows are painted red, white, and blue. There are flags, there's pictures, there's family members' gear from the military hanging in showcases where they supported our country and currently are supporting our country. And you'd be very proud of that. So we can do this all together. We need to stick together on it, and we will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conley.
I have no additional cards in the chambers.
Thank you. We'll then proceed to Zoom. If anybody on Zoom would like to participate, you can call them.
Yep, we have one. We've got Lisa Art.
Thank you. Lisa, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for your consideration for the health department resolutions. I just want to draw your attention to page 146 of the agenda package on a memo from Matt Bowling. And the second paragraph down talks about being able to get support from this funding and increasing our capacity to partner with our congregate care facilities, assisted living, nursing homes, etc., to be a resource for infection prevention control measures to reduce communicable disease outbreaks. I recall when he was interviewing for the position that he said he would have done nothing differently. This policy of putting sick people in our nursing homes increased the deaths of people in the nursing homes, and it was a horrible policy. So I just want to draw your attention to that and hope that you will put some guardrails around that, because we do not want to kill grandma. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other persons on Zoom, if you indicate by clicking on the raise hand function. And I'm seeing.
There's nobody else.
I'll close the call to the public. That's finished. We're at item number 14. Can I get a motion to adjourn in a second?
So moved.
Support. Second.
All those in favor kindly say aye.
Aye.
9-0, we are adjourned.